Julian Mercer could destroy careers with a single phone call. He'd built an empire where fear was currency and power was everything. But when his 8-year-old son stopped speaking, when the bruises appeared, when the school said there was nothing they could do, the most powerful man in the room realized he was completely powerless. This is the story of a man who had to lose everything he believed in to save the one thing that actually mattered. Before we dive into Julian's story, if you're someone who believes that protecting our children matters more than protecting systems, hit that like button right now. Subscribe so you never miss stories that matter. And drop a comment. Have you ever felt powerless trying to protect someone you love? Because this story, it's going to challenge everything you think you know about strength. Now, let me take you into Julian's world. Julian Mercer wasn't just successful, he was untouchable. CEO at 32, Fortune 500 by 35. He'd mastered the art of control, reading people's weaknesses, exploiting hesitation, turning fear into profit. On a Tuesday morning, he ended a man's career before his coffee got cold. At work, he was a machine, efficient, ruthless, respected. At home, he was the same. Homework done? Julian asked. Yes, Dad, Elliot whispered. Good. Julian loved his son. He was sure of it. But love to him meant providing, protection, preparing him for the real world. Emotion, weakness, vulnerability, liability. So when Elliot started getting quiet, when bedtime became a battle, when the smiles disappeared, "You're going to be late. Eat." Julian did what he always did. He ignored it. After all, kids go through phases, don't they? The call came on a Thursday, 2:47 p.m. Julian almost didn't answer. School calls meant parent-teacher conferences, bake sales, things his assistant usually handled. But something made him pick up. "Your son had an incident today, Mr. Mercer." An incident. Julian had seen violence before. Boardroom battles, hostile takeovers. He'd caused pain without blinking. But this... What happened? Julian asked. Elliot. What happened? The nurse said he fell. On the playground. Multiple times, apparently. Julian had built his empire on asking the right questions. Reading the room. Knowing when someone was lying. But with his own son, he had no idea what to say. Did someone do this to you? Who? Elliot, tell me who did this and I'll... You'll what, Dad? You'll what? And for the first time in 15 years, Julian Mercer had no answer. He did what any powerful man would do. He made calls. The principal assured him they'd look into it. The school counselor said bullying was a normal part of development. The superintendent's office told him to file a formal complaint. File a complaint, look into it, normal part of development. These were the same tactics people used on him when they wanted to stall, to deflect, to do nothing. And he was powerless to stop it. The next morning, Elliot didn't want to go to school. The morning after that, he cried. By Friday, his body was rejecting the very idea. And Julian, the man who'd never backed down from a fight, who'd never shown weakness, had no idea how to protect his own child. The empire was cracking. Monday morning, Julian walked into Pinewood Elementary like he was entering a boardroom negotiation. Confident, prepared, ready to win. He had no idea he was about to lose. Principal Davidson had the rehearsed warmth of someone who'd had this conversation 1,000 times. Mr. Mercer, please, sit down. We're so glad you could make it. My son has bruises, a black eye. He's terrified to come to school. What are you doing about it? We take all incidents very seriously, Mr. Mercer, she said. Incidents? There was that word again. Mrs. Chen leaned forward, hands folded. The picture of professional concern. Elliot is going through a difficult adjustment period. Children at this age often struggle with social dynamics. Social dynamics? Julian cut her off. 3 kids cornered my son behind the gym. They beat him. That's not social dynamics. That's assault. We've spoken to the students involved, Principal Davidson said carefully. They say it was roughhousing that got out of hand. Roughhousing. Boys will be boys, Mr. Mercer. It's... Don't you dare finish that sentence. In a boardroom, this is where Julian would have won, where the force of his presence, his reputation, his power would bend people to his will. But Principal Davidson didn't flinch. Mr. Mercer, I understand you're upset, but we have protocols, procedures. We can't simply punish students based on one child's account. One child's account? Look at him. The evidence is on his body. Elliot hasn't been forthcoming with us, Mr. Mercer. He won't tell us what happened. He won't name names. Without his cooperation. He's 8 years old. He's terrified. We need your son to participate in the process, Principal Davidson said. Mediation. Conflict resolution. We want all the children to feel heard. All the children? All the children? My son is the victim here. Mr. Mercer, I'm going to be frank with you. Your son is quiet, withdrawn. He doesn't engage with other students. Some teachers have noted he seems almost cold, unapproachable. And there it was, the knife, sliding between his ribs. Are you saying this is his fault? No, of course not. But children pick up on social cues. If Elliot is giving off signals that he's different, other children may respond to that. Julian had been in 1,000 fights, corporate warfare, legal battles, negotiations where millions hung in the balance. But nothing had ever made him feel like this. So, you're telling me, Julian said slowly, dangerously, that because my son is quiet, because he keeps to himself, he deserves to be beaten? That's not what we're saying. Then what are you saying? Principal Davidson sat back down. The meeting was over. We'll continue to monitor the situation, Mr. Mercer. We encourage Elliot to speak with Mrs. Chen, and we ask that you work with us, not against us. Work with you? Yes. You've done nothing. You're going to do nothing. And you want me to work with you? Julian walked out of Pinewood Elementary with something he'd never felt before. Helplessness. The most powerful man in every room he entered. Couldn't save his own son. For 2 weeks, Julian tried to fix it the only way he knew how. He called lawyers, looked into transferring schools, considered homeschooling, private tutors. He could remove Elliot from the problem, buy his way out. That's what money was for. But every option felt like running. And Julian Mercer didn't run. It was midnight when Julian finally did what he should have done weeks ago. He went to talk to his son. Can't sleep? Julian asked. Me neither. Julian had given 100 speeches, commanded rooms full of executives, negotiated billion-dollar deals. But sitting on his son's bed, he had no script. I'm sorry, Julian finally said. For what? For not protecting you. For not seeing you. Elliot stared at his father. This man who never apologized, never showed weakness. It's not your fault, Dad. It feels like it is. Why do they hate me? Julian had spent 15 years teaching people to fear him, to respect power, to never show vulnerability. He'd built an empire on it. And now his son, quiet, gentle, kind, was suffering because he was everything Julian had trained himself not to be. They don't hate you, buddy. They don't understand you. Why not? Because you're better than them. It was the wrong thing to say. Julian knew it the moment it left his mouth. I don't want to be better. I just want to be normal. And there it was. The truth Julian had been avoiding. His son didn't need a warrior, didn't need power, didn't need fear. He needed a father. "I've spent my whole life making people afraid of me," Julian said quietly. "I thought that's what strength was. Fear. Control. Never letting anyone see you weak. But looking at you now, for the first time in my life, I'm the one who's afraid." "Of what?" "Of losing you." And for the first time in 8 years, Julian Mercer held his son. Not as a CEO, not as a power broker, just as a dad. "I'm scared, Dad," Elliot whispers. "I know, buddy. I know. But I promise you, I'm going to fix this." Julian had spent 2 weeks trying to fight the system with power. It was time to try something he'd never tried before. Asking for help. Lillian Torres had been fighting for kids like Elliot for 20 years. She'd seen 100 fathers like Julian walk through her door. Powerful, frustrated, expecting her to hand them a solution. "Mr. Mercer, I can help you, but you need to understand something first. This isn't a boardroom. You can't intimidate a school board. You can't buy policy change. This fight, it's going to require something you're not used to." "What's that?" "Vulnerability, honesty, and letting other people see your son's pain, and yours. Everything Julian had built his life avoiding. If you're willing to do that, we have a chance. Tell me what we need to do." The empire wasn't cracking anymore. It was transforming. Lillian didn't waste time. She showed Julian the architecture of institutional failure, policies designed to protect schools, not students. Liability concerns masquerading as child safety. "They're covering themselves," he said. "Always have been, always will be, unless someone forces them not to." The next school board meeting was in 3 weeks. "This is our window. Public comment, 3 minutes. We make them listen." 3 minutes to change everything? 3 minutes to start, she said. "But we need more than just you." Lillian knew what Julian was just learning. He wasn't alone. Every parent in that room had hit the same wall, the same dismissals, the same bureaucratic maze. "They told me my daughter was being dramatic, that girls are just mean sometimes. They said boys roughhouse, that it builds character." For the first time in his life, Julian wasn't the most powerful person in the room. He was just another parent, fighting for his child. Alone, they ignore us. Together, we're harder to dismiss. Who's willing to speak? Julian approached it like any campaign. But this time, Lillian kept pulling him back. "Too aggressive. You sound like you're threatening them." "I am threatening them. And that's exactly why. They'll shut you down. You need to make them see Elliot, not fear you." Julian had given 1,000 presentations, but he'd never written anything that mattered this much. Every word felt inadequate, every sentence too small to contain what he needed to say. "What are you writing, Dad?" I'm trying to help people understand what you're going through. Are you going to tell them about me?" "Only if you're okay with it." Elliot read his father's testimony, every word, every detail. "You wrote that you were scared?" "I am scared." "But you're never scared." "I am when it comes to you." "You can tell them, Dad. Tell them everything." March 15th arrived like a reckoning. 37 parents showed up, each with a story, each with 3 minutes. Julian had walked into hostile boardrooms without a tremor, but tonight his hands shook. The school board looked exactly like Julian expected. Bureaucrats, administrators, people who'd perfected the art of looking concerned while doing nothing. "We'll now open the floor for public comment. Please keep remarks to 3 minutes." One by one, parents stood. A mother whose son tried to take his own life. A father whose daughter stopped eating. A grandmother raising her grandson because his parents couldn't handle watching him suffer. 3 minutes, then 3 more, then 3 more. The wall was cracking. Julian Mercer. Julian had commanded rooms 5 times this size. But he'd never felt smaller. He took a breath. And he let the empire fall. Julian looked down at his prepared speech. 3 pages. Carefully worded. Strategic. Then he folded it and spoke from somewhere he'd never spoken from before. My name is Julian Mercer, and I'm here because I failed my son. I run a Fortune 500 company. I've closed billion-dollar deals. I've built an empire on knowing how to win. But I couldn't protect an 8-year-old boy from being beaten in your hallways. His name is Elliot. He likes dinosaurs. He reads above his grade level. He's kind, gentle, everything I spent my life teaching myself not to be. 3 boys cornered him behind the gymnasium. They told him he was weird, wrong, that he deserved it. He came home with bruises, a black eye, cracked ribs. And your principal told me it was roughhousing. Dr. Hammond tried to interrupt. Mr. Mercer, we've addressed. Please, I have 2 minutes left. Let me finish. I came to you with power, demanded action, threatened lawyers, and you gave me nothing. Because that's what you're trained to do. Protect the institution, manage liability, avoid lawsuits. But my son isn't a liability. He's a child. For 15 years, I believed strength meant never showing weakness, never asking for help, never admitting I was wrong. But standing here tonight, with these parents, I've never felt stronger. Because we're not asking you anymore. We're telling you. This ends. Tonight. Julian pulled out a folder, placed it on the podium. This is a formal complaint, signed by 37 families, documented incidents of bullying, harassment, and administrative negligence. We're filing it with the State Board of Education, with the superintendent, with local media. But we're giving you a choice first. Work with us. Implement real anti-bullying protocols, mandatory training for staff, a third-party oversight committee, and accountability, real accountability, when students are harmed. Or fight us, and watch what happens when 37 families who've been ignored decide they're done being quiet. It wasn't a threat. Not really. It was a promise. I'm not the most powerful person in this room anymore, and I don't want to be. We are. The board couldn't ignore it anymore. Not with every eye in the room on them. Not with cameras recording. Not with the truth finally spoken out loud. We'll take a brief recess. To discuss. Lillian put a hand on Julian's shoulder. That wasn't the speech we practiced. I know. It was better. When the board returned, Dr. Hammond looked different. Tired, beaten maybe, or maybe just awake. Dr. Hammond, after careful consideration, the board has decided to form a special committee to review our current anti-bullying policies. Additionally, we're committing to implementing third-party oversight, mandatory staff training, and a transparent reporting system for all incidents. We hear you, and we will do better. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't enough, not yet. But it was a start. And for the first time in months, Julian felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Change didn't happen overnight. The bullying didn't magically stop. The system didn't transform immediately. But there were cracks in the armor now. Light getting in. And then, one Tuesday afternoon, Julian saw something that made him stop. Connection. Small. Fragile. But real. His name is Marcus, and he has all the dinosaurs, Dad, even the really rare ones. Julian had closed deals worth hundreds of millions, built towers with his name on them, made grown men tremble. But nothing had ever felt as important as this moment. Dad? Elliot asked as Julian turned off the light. Yeah, buddy. Thanks. For, fighting for me? Always, Elliot. Always. I love you, Dad. Julian Mercer had spent 15 years building an empire on fear. He'd believed strength meant never breaking, never bending, never showing the world who you really were. He'd been wrong. The fight wasn't over. It never really is. But Julian wasn't fighting alone anymore. He'd learned something more valuable than any business strategy. Real power isn't making people fear you. It's standing up for the people who can't stand up for themselves. It's admitting when you're wrong. It's being brave enough to be vulnerable. And it's learning that the only empire worth building is the one built on love. Julian Mercer lost everything he thought made him powerful, and gained the only thing that ever really mattered. If someone you know is fighting for their child, if you've ever felt powerless in the face of a system that won't listen, remember, you're not alone, and your voice matters. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is ask for help. Julian's story reminds us that real strength isn't about power. It's about showing up, even when you're scared. If this story moved you, don't just watch and leave. Hit that like button. It tells YouTube to share this with parents who need to hear it. Subscribe and turn on notifications because every week we bring you stories about real people facing impossible choices and finding the courage to change. And here's what I really want to know. What would you have done in Julian's position? Have you ever had to fight a system that wouldn't listen? Drop your story in the comments. Let's build a community where parents know they're not alone. Share this video with someone who's fighting for their child right now. Sometimes, just knowing someone else understands, that's where change begins. Remember, you are not alone.